Um, his name was Pat, or as we joked, Jerry to my Elaine. We didn't date first like those two, but we were friends for a very long time. And just like those two, our favorite discussion topic was absolutely nothing. Our most heated debate for years on end was how to properly take frosting off the top of a tasty cake. Unfortunately, though, being wrong about frosting extraction was not Pat's only flaw. I was only 15 when the words, "What is it going to take to make you stop waking up in a hospital?" came out of my mouth. And the thing that really gets me about that memory now is that my follow-up thought is, geez, and that was just when he was doing cocaine. That was how it started, with cocaine. Some 1982 Republican might tell you it was like the reefer that really started it, but that was not it. It was when his temper got short and his face turned into slate. It was when he was beet red more than he was white, and when you could fall into his pupils. It was when you knew he was in there somewhere, but it just was not quite him. Whenever things would go really wrong, I would end up in this internal dichotomatic battle with myself. And things would go really wrong. I mean, the kind of wrong that made me wonder if I was in the CW version of Requiem for a Dream. One of these times was at a house party when I saw him storm downstairs after him and my friend Christy, who he was dating, had disappeared together for a while. He came down and he looked enraged, and she was not following, so I went upstairs to check on her. And what I find is her in a ball on the floor, sobbing and babbling. He kept kicking me. He just wouldn't stop kicking me. So now it's my turn to fly down the stairs in a rage. And when I finally find him, I don't even break my stride. My fist just goes to glide right into his face. But to this day, I will never forgive Adam Wisniewski for catching my arm, because when I find him, he is just calmly smoking a cigarette like nothing had happened, his face that beet red slate, and he says to me, "She started it." I am so mad remembering this right now, and the problem with that anger now and forever always is that it has nowhere to go. Pat died. You might be wondering how it is I managed to stay friends with someone after I found my other friend beaten and him callous about it, and I have to tell you that I barely know myself. This was a common phenomenon amongst us as his friends, where that dichotomy that I mentioned comes in, because our saying was, if he were anyone else, we'd never talk to him again, but it's Pat. And that made all the sense in the world to us, despite sounding so vague. And whenever things were really wrong and I was staring into whatever stone he had turned into, I'd always flash back to my friend who I'd climb out onto my roof with to count clouds and talk about how cool it would be if we could jump over to the next house. I really miss that friend, and I missed him even while he was still here. Our friendship wasn't a constant after he started using. We'd get into these cold wars after an incident, one of which I don't have time to go into is when he stalked Christy and I for an afternoon, and then we wouldn't speak for days or sometimes even months. When I left for college, he seemed okay, but then I was 8 hours away, and it was really easy for him to lie to me. So he'd tell me he had this or that thing going on, that he was doing great, and then I would go home expecting one thing and then experiencing another. One time when I went home, we had plans, but Pat's dad picked me up instead. Pat was too fucked up to drive. For some reason, we still go out to lunch, but that was one of the times that I could barely get through it without crying, because it was like he was trapped right underneath the surface, and I just had to watch him drown while eating a turkey club. I texted him the next day and told him not to talk to me until he got help. We did not speak for a year. I don't know who reached out to who first, but I just know that he was back in my life when I was 25, and enough so that we were going to my friend's wedding together. Pat picks me up, and within 5 minutes, I can tell he's fucked up. But I'm 25, so I don't do the smart thing and tell him to, let me out of the car. I stay. After driving for a little bit, he says, "I gotta get Zach's wedding present," and he pulls into a gas station. And what kind of wedding gift do you get at a gas station, you might wonder? None. You get it from the trunk of a car at a gas station because you're buying a massive brick of weed in the middle of the day, right next to a very busy highway. And again, I should leave, and again, I stay. By now we're running late, and he realizes this, so his solution is to speed her up 95, 100 miles per hour down an already extremely hazardous highway. And when I ask him to slow down, he calls me a pussy. I am so mad remembering this again because he put my life in danger. Like a high-speed car crash could have easily killed us, and then getting pulled over could have easily put us in jail. And like, I had already done one night in county jail for weed, and I did not need to do any more. I do get smart later, and I don't drive home with him from the wedding. I get my father to pick me up. And the next day, I'm just so bereft. He's broken my heart so many times, but he's never put me in danger. And it just feels so different. So I call him and I say, "You put my life in danger, and unless you get clean, I will never speak to you again." And he says, "Stop being such a dramatic bitch, Carly." And he hangs up. And that is the last thing that my childhood best friend ever says to me. 2 years later, I get a text that just says, "It happened, he's gone." I felt like I was spinning. And while it made sense because drug addicts rarely live their full lives, it also made no sense because then people tell me he had been clean for almost a year. So then the devastation of his death just turns into this skulking beast for me because now I have this unknowable question. Why didn't he reach out? Instead of properly grieve, I smother it. I silently wonder why. I quietly cry in these small spaces where the boyfriend I'm living with at the time can't see because his question to me is, why do you even care? He was a shitty person and a drug addict. And for some reason, I nod along. Why do I care so much? He didn't care enough to reach out to me when he was clean. Maybe we weren't as close as I thought we were. But we were, and the more I try to cage the beast, the stronger it grows. Eventually, I shed that boyfriend, and in so opened myself back up to the original question, why didn't he reach out? I wrote him letters that I would tear up. I sang songs that reminded me of him and sobbed. I'd drive circles around his house whenever I visited home. I would just squeeze my eyes shut until they burned and ask him to give me some type of sign, some kind of answer. And nothing ever came. There was no peace to be had there. So when I see an ad for an upcoming seance, I'm kind of like, okay, like this could be a good idea. Maybe I could get a clue there. Maybe he'll give whatever theater dropout is running it some type of thing to tell me. So I convinced my friend Dana to go with me, and I don't quite remember if I told her it was because I was actively seeking a connection with my dead friend. But I do remember that the seance people take Dana, they give her a rusty bell, and then they shove her into a haunted wardrobe like she's some kind of ghost tuning fork. And I just have this moment where I'm looking at her and I'm like, shit, I have sacrificed my alive friend to get to a dead one. This seance ends and nothing in it reminds me of him. We linger for a little bit, but the next part that is so hazy, but I remember they use some type of spirit board and they tell me how he died without me having to tell them. And they look at me and they say, "Carly, he says to stop looking. He isn't here anymore." And despite the fact that that came from a $25 seance in a shed, I took that as gospel. I did need to stop looking. He's not looking for me. I need to find peace myself. That night, I think I cried out all of my years of repression. I had gotten extremely, extremely drunk, so it's in bits and pieces, but I do vaguely remember my partner taking off my shoes while I babbled something about he was my best friend. The next day, I feel otherworldly. I wake up too early and just stare into my backyard at nothing, feeling empty, feeling destroyed, feeling all of those things I should have let myself feel the moment I got those text messages. I felt horrible, but I also felt at peace. And the fact that I had lost someone and then found the strength to let him go is a strength that I am thankful for. Thanks, y'all.